Coming up next on the Breadwinning Mums.
Ask for help. The way you do this is by asking for help and getting support in both parts of your life. At work, right, and getting people to run parts of the team, and then in your personal life, letting people come in and help watch your kids so that you can do both, or whatever. Maybe it's you watch the kid while people help clean up the house, but you're trying to find time for both things. Time is your most precious resource, and finding so you can spend it on whatever you want, whether or not it is family or work, and finding ways of getting others to help you so you can get more of that time back is that's how you do it.
That's okay.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jane Lim. On the Breadwinning Mums podcast, we debunk the myths of working mums, cheer each other on, and show the world that it's okay to be a mum and still pursue excellence in your chosen area of expertise. Today we're chatting with Masha Sedova, a fellow breadwinning mum with a 6-month-old son, Helix. Masha is a co-founder and president of Elevate Security. She shared with us her life story about moving to the States from Russia, building a startup company in Berkeley, California, and juggling pregnancy and early motherhood whilst fundraising and transforming her company to a complete remote work arrangement. Here we go with Masha Sedova.
Hello, Masha.
Hi, Jane. Great to be here.
Nice to see you again. So we first met at the House School of Business event, where you were one of the panelists of the startup founders. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Masha Sedova. I have the privilege of being co-founder and president of a company called Elevate Security. We're about a 50-person company based in Berkeley, California. Well, mostly online, actually. But once upon a time, our headquarters were in Berkeley, California. And as a company, we focused on the cybersecurity space, helping enterprises secure their workforce against attackers. I've been in security for my entire career, and just recently had the opportunity of becoming a mom to a 6-month-old boy named Helix.
Congratulations. Felix or Helix?
Helix with an H.
Wow. Okay. And how has that been?
It is overall an incredible experience, life transformational, and hands down one of the best things I've ever done. But we'll get into more of that later.
Yeah, of course. All right. So let's go back to the very beginning, I guess, when you first just started to, I guess, graduate from school and finding your way out into the world. Did you always know that you were going to be a mom?
I knew that I wanted to have kids. It was actually, if I could have orchestrated it, my plan, even in my 20s, was to wait as long as possible to have kids. And I did a lot of research around fertility cliffs and all that. And if circumstances in my life could have aligned, I knew that I wanted to try having for kids pretty much as late as I could do so in a healthy manner, because for me, career, my ambition was always very important. And so I am 36 today, and gave birth at 36 and started trying when I was 35. So it worked out kind of the way that I had hoped it might.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Very organized.
Yeah.
Okay. So you always knew you were going to work on your career. Where did you grow up actually?
I mostly grew up in on the East Coast in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Moved out to California in, oh gosh, when was it? 2009. So I've been in California longer than I've been anywhere in my life.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you always knew you were going to be a career person. Did you know that you were going to move into a security
Yeah,
space?
security was one of the things I studied in school before I even before it was even a degree you could get. My grandmother taught my father how to program, and my father taught me. So my grandmother was sort of my original mentor in the space. And
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
I've been thinking of and doing work around computer space since I was a little girl.
Yep. What did your grandma do? That's so
Yeah.
surreal.
Yeah, she was a programmer before there really were computers. She graduated with a CS degree in 1954 in the Soviet Union, when they
Wow.
were punch cards, and then learned really foundational languages like assembler and Fortran and Cobalt and ultimately C. So yeah, was a hardcore programmer her entire life.
Wow. Okay. So she was like a badass breadwinning
Yeah,
mom from back then too.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And when did they all come here?
We all immigrated, myself included, in 1990. So originally I'm from
Oh,
Russia, as is my whole family. And yeah,
okay.
we moved to the States.
So you're first generation alongside your yeah, two generations above
Everybody
you.
else, yeah.
How did
Yeah.
all how did you all transition into the American life?
I mean, this country is so incredible in that the work you put in
Yep.
means something, right? And you can actually change your path and your destiny with hard work and grit and a little bit of luck. But there are
Mm,
many countries where if you are born of a certain gender or caste or race or religion, you don't get the opportunity no matter how hard you try. And
mm,
I often think about even now with what the political situation happening between Russia and Ukraine, how grateful I am that we left the country and I get to have been raised and in a country that has a lot less um, political corruption and influence on day-to-day life, and I'm so grateful to have been raised in America and to be able to yeah, like my hard work and
mm.
the work ethic that was instilled in me as an immigrant who was given nothing. We moved to the States with $500 between five of us, right? And so everything we've earned, all the food we put on our table, all everything we bought as a family, as an individual, was always earned by hard work. And this country is really incredible for that reason.
Yeah, that instilled the work ethics, I guess, that you really needed when you're a founder. So there were
Yeah.
five of you that came here from Russia. Was it you, your parents, and your grandparents?
I had two sisters who came with me. My grandparents came later.
Ah, okay. All right. And so was your dad a programmer as well?
He was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
you know,
All the way back. Yeah.
very tight. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Okay, cool. So when was it when you finally knew that you were going to work on this startup then?
I've always had an entrepreneurial streak, and there was something in me that knew that I always wanted to start something entrepreneurial. I actually, out of when I would join Salesforce a couple of years into my career, it was already a relatively large company, 9,000 people at the time. But even then, I had the opportunity of building and running a team. It was not what I was hired to do, but I found a problem, and I said, like, this is the space I really wanted to focus on. And so I got to build and run a team there, which was my initial foray into entrepreneurship in a large organization. And so I got to see what it was like to create, do discovery, create the idea of a product,
Mm,
try to essentially get funding from
mm,
management, build a team around it. So had pockets of entrepreneurship throughout my career, but ultimately in 2017, all the last of the puzzle pieces came together. At that point, I had an idea around work I wanted to do in the space, what kind of problem I want to solve. I had built a brand reputation around. For me, it was particularly security behavior change, and how to how to intersect what people do and how to influence people's behaviors with positive security outcomes. So creating a brand around this, showing that there was a unique idea here that no one was really doing, and then the last of the puzzle pieces was finding a co-founder space, which was a must-have for me before having the courage to start a company.
Yeah. How long did it take you to finally find that problem that you wanted to solve?
No, actually, I found the problem before I found before I knew that I wanted to job. This was the thing I was working on in my career. I couldn't not see this problem and I couldn't not solve it. And I was either going to continue solving it as a day-to-day practitioner and doing security behavior change for companies, or I was going to start a nonprofit, or I was going to start a consulting company, or I was going to start a product. But I'm obsessed with the idea of solving for employee risk in organizations, and I was born to solve this problem.
I love it. So you knew it from years and years before you even started working for Salesforce then?
I had an inkling. I knew that I was really interested in security, but I was also really interested in the human element. And I didn't quite know what it looked like. I kind of, the best thing that I could, I can bring in an example towards is I had a sense, like a spice, and like, oh, this feels like it really lights me up and I really care about it. And I see that it's a really big problem and I'm bringing some really unique ideas to it. That it's not enough to start the company, right? I needed to figure out, what is the product I'm building? How am I going to sell it? How are people going to pay for it? All of that came later, but I knew early on that in my gut that I really wanted to be spending my time solving this problem, and I could see it was a big enough problem that a lot of people had, and that was coming back at me from the market pretty loudly between speaking engagements I was getting and people calling me and asking about the program I was building at Salesforce, and so I had a realization that my passion to solve this problem was also filling a need that the market had.
So were you working on this solution even throughout your time at Salesforce as well?
Well, we did, I would say, the early foundational stages of what the company is doing now. And yeah, we created some, I would say, early thinking and early prototypes there. And obviously it looks very different when it's a platform that a lot of companies can use versus one company specific solution. But yeah, we essentially had our first very early prototypes at Salesforce.
Yeah. Okay. Was there any friction when you wanted to leave Salesforce and take this idea with you? Did they ever say, "Hey, I think we own some of the IP because you were working for us then"?
That's a great question. And we were actually quite nervous about this in the early days, but when we took a look at the idea, we saw that it wasn't core to any of the ways that Salesforce was making money, right? So creating security behavior change is about as far away from what Salesforce's core offering was. So we were not going to be jeopardizing any of their business or their clients, which is step one. And step two, we ultimately got back. One of our angel investors was one of the co-founders of Salesforce, Parker Harris, and the CTO at the time. And so we decided to cover our butts that way by making sure that we got a blessing from the executives. And there was a couple of ways we could have done that. We either could have gotten Salesforce Ventures to try to back us as a spinoff, and they've done that a couple of times, and actually have since then come and invested in the company since in a couple later rounds, or talking to one of the founders, or going the legal route was absolutely going to be the hardest and more painful one. And so if you have an idea that isn't going to conflict against your current company's core way of making business decisions, it's totally fine to start finding other ways of getting that support.
Yep, and bring them on as an angel investor. That's strike of genius, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. And so you did entrepreneurship whilst you were at Salesforce. You did entrepreneurship outside of the sales force. Which one is harder, and how would you describe the two?
Oh, absolutely. Externally to Salesforce, because at the end of the day, you get to have a paycheck from a large company, and you know it's going to be there every week, and it's just a bigger safety net. When you go out on your own, there's no guarantee that tomorrow there's going to be money in the bank, and you have to fight for that and make it survive, and fight for your survival, and prove that you should exist another day. And it's exciting, and it's terrifying 100 times more than working for a larger company, but it's also, there's a sense of freedom that you just can't quite get when you work for somebody else, and as opposed to working for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. And what are the top 3 lessons, personal lessons, that you've learned since becoming a founder?
It's a great question. I'm not just worried about limiting it to 3. One of them was finding a good co-founder is non-optional. It's not nice to have. It's the difference between making a more sustainable life choice and not. And one of the reasons, and I think we'll get into this a little bit about the balance of being both a mom and a founder, having a co-founder is the secret to that. So that's one thing that I'd say I got incredibly lucky with. The second one is unlearning all the time. So what you knew and what got you to your current point is not going to be the thing that, it may not be the thing that's going to get you to succeed in a year from now or 2 years from now. And there's been a lot of humility and a lot of letting go of the things that I thought I knew, or the things that worked up until a point and then they don't work anymore. And not only do you have to find a new way to do it, you actually have to dismantle what you've done. And what that's looked like for us is potentially some product pivots, right? We've built one kind of product that worked to get us to a certain customer and a certain market share, and then we realized that market share was way too small for some of the things we wanted to do, and so we needed to pivot, and learning to let go, let go of things that you thought, you have a lot of conviction in, and realizing that it worked up until a certain point and then it no longer serves you. The third piece is that, and I knew this going in, but I keep seeing this again and again and again, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I love that quote. But at this point, we've run a company through a pandemic, through the start of recession, through a war, which is probably the hardest possible time, right? To do all this. And we've gone from being an in-person to all remote, like so many crazy things. And the thing that keeps the lights on in the company is the culture, and building a culture where people are excited to show up, feel like they really are respected by their peers and have similar respect. Their psychological safety in the environment is a strategic differentiator. It's the reason people will stick with your company during hard times. It gets you loyalty, and it also has people show up with everything they have, and not because they have to, but because they want to. And the company that I started is called Elevate Security, not just because we are up leveling security, but we wanted to do it in a very different way than a lot of other security companies look like. And security culture and the culture of the company is something that we spend a lot of time focusing on. And I knew this lightly, sort of like in theory, and you read about this all the time, but it isn't until your company goes through like a pandemic together, you really realize like the currency of culture is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. Awesome. So find your co-founder, learn to unlearn and pivot when you're ready, and culture. Let's talk about the first one. How did you find your co-founder and how did you know that they're the right person to bring on board?
Yeah. So Robert and I were coworkers together at Salesforce, and we had worked
Okay.
together for about 5 years. And when we started talking about this company idea, Robert was already looking for, he already knew he wanted to start a company and he was just looking for the right idea. I had the idea and I was just looking for someone to found it with. And
Perfect.
so we both sort of agreed on the fact that we liked this problem. It was a really hard problem. We had very complementary skill sets. Um, we also had a lot of deep mutual respect for each other. He
Mm,
was one of my favorite coworkers I'd ever had the opportunity and privilege of working with.
mm,
I loved the way that he built and ran teams and seeing him work in that capacity. And so the opportunity of spending a lot of time working with him
mm,
uh, was seemed more like a privilege than anything else.
mm,
And we had really good communication. And because the whole relationship is built on mutual respect, and it's given us the opportunities to really show up for each other and face really difficult challenges together, as opposed to fighting each other for a specific outcome. And like there's so many challenges outside of the organization. It's so great if you two are in lockstep. And so there's a couple of books around this. I'm trying to see if I can remember the statistics, but the best and healthiest way to find a co-founder is someone you've worked with before. So it's a sort of a loose connection. You've known each other, but you're not family or married, because those tend to have family, married, or like really super close friends, because those have a pretty high chance of falling apart. The second most successful set of founding criteria are people who've randomly met.
mm,
So co-founder dating, not like business dating,
mm,
is the
mm.
second best way to find a successful business relationship. And so, yeah, if your next co-founder might be someone you're sitting next to right now.
So the second part that you mentioned was unlearning and
Mhm.
pivoting. And this was one thing that I had a conversation with Vivek not too long after we met as well. I did a startup program back home called New Wave. And during
Mhm.
the time I was doing it, it was interesting to see all of the feedback that I get from the market as well. But I guess the hindsight that I get after the program was, at what point do you pivot? At what point do you actually depart from your original principles of ideas? It's quite a gray line, right? Um, and when do you know when you've gone too far and when you've listened too much to what the market's telling you? And then how to balance those two equations.
Yeah, I mean, if I knew the answer, I would be a billionaire by now. I think you just constantly need to be asking yourself that question, but you've definitely hit upon it, right? There's a delicate balance between leading the market and being an innovator and delivering something that no one's ever thought of, and at the same time getting appropriate feedback from customers around what they want. It's sort of like, if you interviewed people around how, what's the quote? It's like if you interviewed people who use candles, what they wanted for lighting, they say they'd want a brighter candle versus a flashlight, right?
Yeah.
So you really need to balance sort of your own conviction in what needs to happen versus
Mm,
listening to customers. And there's no perfect balance. There's no perfect solution to this.
yeah.
Ultimately, and there needs to be someone who's going to pay for your idea. So what you need to do is listen for the pain,
Mm,
and then it's on you to come up with a solution. But make sure you're clearly identifying the pain point. Like
yeah.
don't be innovating on the pain point that already exists. Be innovating on the solution, and blow people's minds when you come up with an even better way of solving something that they're currently struggling with.
Yeah. Okay. So from the time when you just launched Elevate Security, how many pivots have you had?
Yeah, I think people define pivots in a slightly different way, but for us, maybe it's not been like a 180, but it's like a course
Yep,
correction,
yep,
a little bit to the left, a little bit to the left. We've
yep.
done three.
Mm,
We first initially started by creating a game. Then we went through scorecards, and then the last thing we've created is risk scores that can be used to tailor controls. Some of this, each of these things, the learnings from them, we folded into the next iteration. So it's not like we've completely done away with, but we've definitely changed our focus.
yeah. Okay, interesting. I mean, three, that's not a bad number, right? I think
Yeah.
um you must be doing something right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's good. Or maybe zero would have been being perfect right out of the gate. I don't know anyone who's ever done. This is actually one of the reasons why investors and early companies look at the founders more than
Mm,
they do the product. They
mm,
first and foremost weigh the founders, then they look at the market, then they look at the product. And the idea here is that a B idea with an A team will always beat out an A idea with a B team
yeah,
because you never know what's around the corner, and
yeah.
you need to have the skill sets on board, and the flexibility to tackle whatever comes up.
Mm. That's really interesting. I was having another conversation with a facilitator back home, and we were talking about leadership. So, in a consulting point of view, and I asked, in a crisis management situation, which one is more important, the framework or the people
Hmm.
involved? And it's always the people. So, I guess, different areas, different contexts, but still the same. It all comes back to the people involved,
Hmm.
which leads us to your third point, culture.
Yeah,
So you're right, pandemic, recession, war,
yeah.
and you've made it through, and 50 people, right, currently,
Hmm.
and you've transitioned to remote work.
Hmm.
How do you instill that culture from the very beginning until now?
Yeah. Um, yeah, it doesn't happen by accident. It's super intentional. And uh, the first 10 people you hire in your company are the people who are going to set the culture. So making sure that you hire not just for great skill sets, but also people who live and breathe the values that you set forth for the company. Some of the best advice I've gotten was that values should be distinct, right? There should be a subset of people like, you know what, those values aren't for me, because if they're values that describe everybody, they're not a good way of filtering out, oh, is this the right place for me to be? And there should be your set of values should be, when people read that, they should either clearly self-select in and say, yeah, that is me, and I want to be part of people who are like that, or people
Mm,
who self-select out and you're like, you know what,
mm,
I'm I'm
mm,
not like that, right? I don't subscribe to those. I'm going to find a company that does.
mm,
So defining values, and I wish to I'd like to say that from a values perspective, we nailed it right out of the gate. We started with 10 that we really loved, theoretically, and every year for the first 2 years, so we went through, so year 0, 1, and 2, we iterated and scrubbed and said, are these still the right 10? Uh, we wrote this on paper, but is this what we're really living? Is this really what we want? And sometimes we needed to course correct how we were living to what we wanted to be. And there's some things that we were actually doing in the culture, but we never even wrote down. And ultimately, we ended up with six. We initially pared down to five, and then we added one more over time, and we've gotten six that have lived on year after year. And now we hire against them, we interview against them. But one of the biggest things that I've done, and that we've done as a culture, as a company, is really leaning into the concept of psychological safety.
mm,
Google did a really incredible report around what makes teams super successful, and the underlying repeated value or repeated thing that they found across all teams was psychological safety, the
mm,
ability to take risks, make mistakes, and feel like your teammates still have your back.
mm,
And there were teams who were super diverse that exuded these skill sets, and then there were teams that were super homogeneous, studied
mm,
from same schools, and both were super high performing, but the thing that ultimately led to the difference was they had psychological safety. There's a lovely write up around this, as well as 10 questions that you can ask as part of a survey, which we do on an ongoing basis to ensure that we are doing everything we can to create a culture of that. And then hearing feedback, right? When people don't feel like they're showing up like that, because you're not going to get it right all the time. Listening, iterating, and fixing. That's the other part.
Awesome. So you actually take time once a year with Robert to sit down, go through those values, make sure that you still living those values, and that those values are aligning with your work and also your personal lives, but also reiterating those values as well. Once
Yeah,
a
we
year,
also
even
do it
now?
for every new hire orientation. We go through the values, and yeah, it doesn't even have to be every year. Like as I present them, I check in with myself. I'm like, oh, can I still speak authentically to this value?
Mm.
And if something's not doesn't come up for me, or I was like, yeah, I am. Uh, we sit down and we talk about it, and we're like, are we changed? Is the company
Mm.
changed? Like what's going? And so it's not a this
Yeah.
is now the value review.
Yeah.
It's a if I don't feel right presenting to it, if it feels hypocritical, I know something's off,
Yeah.
and it requires course correction.
So that's your work life. Tell us a little bit more about home life.
Yeah. So I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We'll start with geography first, and then we'll narrow down.
Okay.
I had the opportunity in the pandemic to leave San Francisco and move to the Redwood Mountains. I live here with my husband Rob, and we've been married
Oh,
for
Rob and Rob.
Yeah, my co-founder is Robert, and my
Yeah.
husband is Rob, and I am
Okay.
very glad they both agreed to go by slightly different names. It's very,
Okay.
it's it's great.
Okay.
Otherwise, very confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Rob, my husband, we've been married for 3 years. He's actually also in computer security, but not how we met. We met through friends in San Francisco. He is originally from Australia, although has spent half his life in the UK. So he
Oh.
has an accent, a delightfully confusing accent that is half
Yeah.
Aussie, half British.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got married 3 years ago. I just snuck that in right before the pandemic.
Oh, nice.
And in May of this year, just gave birth to our first kid, as I was mentioning, Helix, who is now almost 6 months old.
Great.
Mhm.
How did you guys meet? So through friends. When was this? What was the setting?
Yeah. So we initially met at a Halloween costume party. He was dressed as a bat, and I was dressed as a lion. But really, a lot of the place where we got to have a good conversation was at a friend's birthday party. But one of the things that both he and I are involved with outside of work is the Burning Man community. We both really love building large scale art installations and creating interactive activities. He was really into immersive theater, and we yeah, we started bonding over that conversation and creating like immersive interactive experiences and art pieces, uh, and really met through our Burning Man community in San Francisco, who ultimately so we actually had numerous dates and conversations before we ever really got into the realization that we were very much actually in the same industry and had so many overlaps.
Yeah.
So much so that at one point his boss tried to recruit me onto their team, and so I went for like kind of a pseudo interview on campus, and I was like, no, this is all too close. I'm not going to do that. So yeah, so so a lot of overlap professionally, but we met through personal interests.
When was this? When did you guys meet?
Oh, so we've been together for 7 years. So however,
Wow.
whatever year that was,
2015?
that
Yeah.
seems about right. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
that.
That's all
Yeah.
right. So, dated for 7 years and then married for 3 years now.
So we dated for 4 and married for 3. Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. Which one was the hardest, finding your husband or finding your co-founder? Rob or Robert?
Gosh, equally difficult. I mean, the thing is, having a co-founder is also like getting married. Like
Yeah.
I spent so much time and tackled difficult situations. So I got to tell you, the skills that make you a good spouse is also this. There are also the skills that make you a good
Yeah.
co-founder. Giving and receiving feedback, listening, forgiveness, never saying "I told you so." Like
And
not
learning.
the unlearning. There's so much, yeah, or tackling new skills together, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kept joking, like when just before I went into labor, I was like, I wonder if keeping a company alive during the pandemic is going to be harder or easier than giving birth. And it's not an apples to apples comparison, but they both require a lot of perseverance, I should say.
Yep. One
Yeah,
is more short-lived, I guess, but a lot
totally.
more
Yeah,
intense.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, they're both such critical life decisions and, also require a little bit of luck, being introduced or being in the right place, the right time, just
Yeah.
to meet the right people.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. And so which one is harder, I guess, being a mum of a newborn? You've lived the first, fourth trimester now, so you're out
Yep.
of the woods.
Yeah.
Or, during those first few months or first year of starting out your own company, how did the two contrast?
Yeah. So I actually, amazingly, I think having a newborn has really helped my journey on the startup world. They're very different experiences, to be clear. I mean, you're both keeping both alive, but they require very different skill sets. And I would say both require a trust in yourself, a level of your intuition. And a boldness of going forward, even though you may not know what's around the corner, right? Like um, trusting that no one else has any better answers than you do,
Hmm.
uh, and then also reaching out and asking for help. I think that's both valid in both cases. But again, they're very different. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about my journey to motherhood is showing up with a very different part of myself.
Mm.
My work self requires a lot of brain power and a lot of
Mm.
deep thinking and deep
Mm.
work and networking and being charismatic and on. And me being a mother requires a lot of empathy and a lot of patience, a lot of intuition and trust,
Mm.
and a lot of asking and receiving help has been part of the journey. But one of the things that has been an unexpected gift in both is that uh, before becoming a mother, Elevate was my first child, and its success was intrinsically, or I guess still is intrinsically tied into my own um, understanding of my own self worth. No matter how much I wanted to unpack it, I would be very unrealistic to say that if the company failed, I would feel like I failed. I would feel like I did not do enough, right? I was not enough. I did not. I didn't do what needed to be done to get it off the ground. Even though there's so many things outside of your purview, market, timing, etc. But uh, I'm still very conscious about the fact, like, if the company fails, it will feel deeply personal, and that's really scary. And not only is it really scary, I think it also potentially blinds you sometimes for taking the risks you might actually need to do it,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Right. You might actually sometimes you might need to go bold, spend more money in a direction that if it doesn't pay out, your company's done. But
Mm. Mm.
otherwise it's a slow death, right? Where you
Mm.
you have to balance some really big decisions sometimes.
Mm.
But in giving birth and becoming a mother, it's added overnight a whole new part of my identity. And I think
Yep.
about identity as, let's say, a circle, right? With parts of, me as a wife, me as a mother, me as a founder, me as a thinker or
Sister.
the thought leadership, a sister, right? There's a lot of wedges, and me and my career self-identity, how I was perceived by my peers, the respect my of my brand in the industry took up a really big part of my identity. It's something that I had worked
Yeah.
25, 30 years to cultivate
Mm.
and spend much of my waking time focusing on. And so it was a huge part of my
Mm.
self-identity. And as I was mentioning, had really high stakes. And overnight, I now had a huge wedge that did not exist before. And
Mm.
my other wedges had to make room for it.
Mm.
And the place where I think most room was made was in my self-worth related to my company. And that's been really great because it's not that I don't care about its outcome. I deeply do. I really care about my employees. I really care about the company being successful. I really care about being respected. But
Mm.
if the company should fail tomorrow, I I'm still I still have worth. I still have
Mm.
purpose, right?
Mm.
I'm still being a mother has given me a self-identity that um frankly just diversified how I see myself in the world and how I show up. And it's made me rely less on needing to be seen as a successful founder.
Wow. That's deep. I like it.
Thanks.
How was your pregnancy and how did you juggle pregnancy with running your own business and then
Mhm.
the time post delivery when Helix was just, a few days old?
Yeah. Um, I know the pandemic was hard for so many people and so many reasons, but one of the truly incredible benefits of it is working from home, and
Mm.
I got to do my entire pregnancy wearing slippers and pajama pants, and not having to commute at all into any office. And I am so very grateful. And for anyone listening who's had to be pregnant and have to sit in like, commuting and like
Mm.
wear heels to work and go through first trimester nausea, like
Mm.
in public bathrooms. I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know how you did it because it's hard enough as is, right? Working from and I get to do it in sweatpants, right? So, it is like that is a huge gift in that space. So I'm incredibly grateful, right? And just to be able to like be off video, if I wasn't feeling it, right?
Mm.
Um, but we started fundraising in my third trimester. Not
Ooh.
not ideal timing. And I remember just looking at the calendar and saying, I really hope we get funding for this company before I go into labor. The
Mm.
punchline is we didn't. And the thing is about labor is
When
it
it's
comes when it
comes.
comes, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like your
Yeah.
life, there's no
Yeah.
good time for it, right? And but before we get into that, just fundraising while, 6, 7, 8, 9 months
Mm.
pregnant.
Mm.
Um, I'm really grateful I didn't have to do that in person because as much as I would like to say that we live in, a modern era where VCs do not have bias against pregnant women, that's absolutely not true. And I'm just really grateful that that was never part of the equation.
Mm.
I never told any of the people that I was pitching that I was pregnant until it got far enough down in the conversation where it became relevant
Mm.
and it was worth knowing. Mostly before we were about to meet in person. I just dropped them a quick note. It's like, hey, just so
Yeah.
you're not surprised, FYI, right?
Yeah.
Which is how I decided to handle it. I guess some other people might handle it in different ways, but I was very nervous about having my pregnancy be held against me and the company,
Mm.
and us not being able to fundraise because of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just really grateful to take that factor off the table. One of the reasons we actually had a hard time fundraising is because we started fundraising pretty much as soon as like Russia invaded Ukraine, and it did some very, very funky things to the VC market. So our timing was bad in a different way.
Because of the macro or because of your background? I'm not
No, not
understanding the
because of my
context.
background, because of the macro, because of just
Okay.
what it was doing
Yeah.
to the markets. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Good question though.
Yeah, it was really interesting that you mentioned that as well during the class, because I just thought, if it was a guy who has a wife who was about to give birth, he will be living through the exact same dynamics at home, right? Why should that be held against us just because we're the one carrying the baby?
Okay.
So yeah, I wish things so all VCs listening out there, please don't hold it against us. We're all here together, and it's just the other part of the equation, right? It's still the same house at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
but continue on, go on.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing that quickly became real, I was one thing that was really important to me is that I took 3 months off for maternity leave,
Mm,
and when you're running a company, that's hard to do. But I started. Fortunately, the gestation period is 10 months, so you have a lot of time to think about how you're going to step away, and the
mm,
company can run successfully.
mm,
And there's some of the things that and I should back up and say, yes, as the co-founder of a company, I can set the maternity policy. But and what our policy is 3 months of maternity and paternity leave in the company. And I wanted to take that because I wanted to do it for my own
mm,
well-being and my
mm.
baby's well-being, my family's well-being, but I also wanted to model that for my company and for
Yeah.
anybody else in my company, because if I is going to set it as a policy and not take it, what I would
Mm,
be doing is modeling that it was not
yeah.
actually a benefit that we should take. And so um and I firmly believe that it is possible to do both, and to both work and show up for your family. And it requires a little bit of planning and thinking about it, how you're going to manage it.
Mm,
But it is possible to do both, and I wanted to model it. And the first way I was going to start is by actually taking that time off and actually disconnecting meaningfully.
mm,
Um, so uh, the way that I was able to do that is by hiring a really great team around me. So first and foremost, it started with my co-founder. Uh, I do not think that I'd be able to do that. I don't know. I've never lived a different reality, but I in the reality I live in, I couldn't have done that without my co-founder, who I trust implicitly and understands the ins and outs of the business and could absolutely handle the day-to-day operations of the company. I made a
mm,
very clear set of boundaries and said, this is what I absolutely want to be called for. These are the things that you should check in. Send me a text message and I'll let you know if I'm in a place to talk. And here are the
mm.
things, like, feel free to run with
Go,
them.
yeah, go
Yeah.
crazy.
And I said, I'm not planning on checking my email. So,
Mm,
like, communicate with me via text. And so,
mm,
like, please escalate here via this path.
mm.
And so, and I'll hop on if I need to, right? I'll hop on a phone call, but I'm not planning on actively engaging. But I will tell you a sort of secret. I did scroll through my work emails while like up in the middle of the night breastfeeding.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
never responded to any of them, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
did read through a lot of the changes to keep myself. But no one expected that of me.
Yeah,
uh, and I also find that if I had replied midway through, people would be really confused. They should we be
yeah.
looping Masha in? But also hiring really great people in other, like, to run different functions and trusting them, and making sure I really made sure we had the right people in place. And even within a couple of, I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks before I left on maternity leave, we realized that one of the executives we had in one of the functions wasn't going to be the right person, and it seemed crazy to, with 3 months or 3 weeks to go, to let that person go and bring in a replacement, but weighed against the option of having the wrong person in place versus taking a bet on a new one. Um, we decided to take the bet on the new one, and it worked out. So that was a really big thing as well, and also helped me take a step back. And the joy of coming back into a company that's well running in your absence, I mean, is both a joy, but also very humbling. It really, you come back and you're like, well, what value do I provide if everything seems to be working so well here?
Yeah, but you build that, right? So take pride in that. So how was the first few weeks of you coming back to work then? How was that
Yeah,
experience like?
it was honestly, it was quite confusing because there are places where I'll talk about it from the work experience and I'll talk about it from the family experience. Uh, uh, it was confusing because, as I was mentioning, a lot of things were running really well, and I didn't just want to go back to my old patterns and say, oh, well, I had all these one-on-ones, all these meetings. So it's like, okay, so what is the most effective way for me to fill my time?
Yeah.
And it's a really incredible privilege of actually having your calendar wiped clean
Mm,
and then choosing
mm,
what you want to reintroduce.
mm,
And I've been very careful about what kind of meetings I'm reintroducing because now everything on my calendar is weighed against. I would rather be spending time with my baby. Uh, is this a bullshit meeting that could have been an email and instead and I could have instead been hanging out with baby, or is this actually worth my time and my energy?
mm,
And everything's held against that kind of bar, and it really help me set up. It's like, here's my north stars here. Now that I have sort of more or less a major reset in my life, what
mm.
are the major things I want for my goals, and are the meetings I'm reintroducing serving to get to that agenda?
Yep.
Well, how that's shown up for me is actually there's some people that I've made our one-on-ones not weekly but every other week because there was just less things we needed to cover. I introduced a skip level with every person in my company, one person every week, to make sure I was on top of culture stuff. But I more intentionally introduced certain things and removed other things in that gap. And I also did a lot of good calendaring, blocking of times, like this is time for family and this is time for work. And this was not a thing that I did well out of the gate. I tried to kind of working from home, and for me, my childcare is also in my house. Um, Really, it's easy to get distracted and just like,
Yeah.
what, I really don't want to do work. I'd rather just go play in the baby in the bouncer.
Yeah.
But creating some really strict guidelines around,
Yep.
like, I work these hours, and if I can get
Mm,
my work done, I start my day saying this is my to-do list,
mm,
and if I get it done faster,
mm.
I get to go play,
Yeah.
right? And it's motivation for me to be very strict about
Yep.
how and when I manage my time. And again, introducing less bullshit meetings into my calendar helps
Mm,
with getting all that stuff done faster.
mm. Awesome. So you have an in-house nanny?
I have grandparents.
Ah,
Oh yeah,
perfect.
I actually have both sets of grandparents. I won this lottery. One of the things that I've been working on with my folks is
Yeah.
getting them to move out here. And so about a month after Helix was born, my parents moved from Massachusetts to California, which is so great. They're 15 minutes up the road. And then Rob's parents are living with us for 6 months. They came here from Australia, and so they're living with us. And so um, it's a trade-off a little bit on space, but I got to tell you, live-in family
Yeah.
care is
Mm.
so incredible,
The
and that's
best.
actually
Yeah.
it's the best, and it's one of the things that's actually let me get back to work full time because I know my
Yeah.
care is covered
Yeah.
by relatives.
Yeah. And there's no replacement for it. When it's your own, you really feel the love.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So tell me a little bit more about Helix.
Oh yeah. So he just recently he just learned how to basically do like down dog. I think we're probably about a month away from crawling.
Ah,
We had our first sleep through the night last week, and that's been pretty incredible.
yeah.
But he's a pretty chunky monkey. He's 18 pounds,
Wow.
which for sub 6 month olds is pretty good, but he's
Yeah.
very chill and calm baby, and really just likes any excuse to laugh and giggle, and if he's crying, it's because he needs something, and when he gets it, his life's good. So, we definitely got really lucky with a very good temperament baby, and
Yeah.
so grateful to have him in our lives. And it's, I mean, he's just such an endless source of joy. I just feel like I'm now part of the biggest, most obvious secret club in the world of like other parents and other, especially other moms. Like
Yeah.
it's just when you see another mom and you know what they've been through because you've been
Yeah.
through between labor and the pregnancy, it's just like
Yeah.
you know it and they know it, and there's this sort of like unsaid fist bump. It's like I
Yeah.
see you and you see me, and until you join the club, you're surrounded
Yeah,
by
you
moms
can't
all the time,
really.
but
Yeah.
you don't know it. Like you
Yeah.
don't know it's a secret club until you're in it.
Yeah.
And I just I just did not give the credit and the respect that moms were due.
Yeah.
And I'm just it's yeah, I'm so grateful to be part of it now.
That's awesome. How
Yeah.
was the labor?
Uh yeah, it
Just
was
your face changed.
yeah, no, I mean, does anyone like, yeah, labor was great. No,
Yeah.
I did it at a birth center, and I wanted to try to set it up as best as I could to have no interventions, and so 38 hours long without any interventions, which was
Wow.
it was a lot. It was a lot, but yeah, both he and I got through it okay. The baby and I made it all out all in one piece.
Wow.
And it ended up actually being a water birth,
Oh,
which was
nice.
just really wonderful. So
Yeah.
really excited to have been able to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I actually wanted to try water birth, but in the end, my OBGYN decided against it for, I guess, insurance reasons. But good on you. Any more? Are you planning to have any more?
Yeah, probably I'll try for one more in a little bit of time. I think having siblings is it's a whole other kind of relationship that you can gift your kid, and I think that's just really important and something that I'd love to do for him.
Yeah.
And
And yourselves, I
and
guess.
myself, yeah, to be clear,
Yeah.
like yeah,
Yeah. Then
also
you
for
can
me.
just take both to a park and let them play around.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal.
So, it's been 6 months, you're back to work, you have grandparents looking after Helix. How are you managing all aspects of your life? Are there any certain rituals that you and Rob do every week, every month to make it work?
That's a great question. Yeah, so we go out for breakfast, just the two of us on a weekend, maybe once a month or so, just to touch base, and we find this really good conversations there. But he and I have always had our best conversations in long car rides. I think it's probably just getting stuck in a car together,
Yeah.
where for the first half hour we go through logistics, and then it's like, how's it like to be you right now?
Yeah.
And so we've actually found opportunities to do drive sometimes with Helix, often without, and we'll just go somewhere that's a little bit of a drive away, and use the drive actually as our check-in time, and it's been incredibly great for us to keep asking. It's like, what's changed in your reality?
Mm.
A couple of years ago, we took a class, a couples workshop with a whole bunch of other couples from Dr. Julie and John Gottman. And
Oh, yeah.
if you've ever had a chance to check out their work, they're just incredibly prolific around some really cool foundational skills for a relationship. And so every once in a
Mm.
while, we bust out our workbook from there and review things like, common goals and turning towards versus away. And there's a lot of other good principles. And
Mm.
in having a child together that causes upheaval and complete, yeah, turning your life inside out, it's just really good to go back to some principles around hearing and showing up for your partner too, and making sure that you're still there for each other.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could go back in time, so I guess when you just moved to America with your
hmm
family, if you could give your young self one advice, knowing all of the knowledge that you have now, what advice would you give the young Masha?
To not have to run towards the finish line so fast. I pushed myself really hard to be very successful early on, to achieve and to prove that I could. And in doing so, I feel like I shortchanged a lot of the opportunities to play along the way. And it took me really till my late 20s to relearn how to play. And yeah, I think to summarize it, I'd probably tell myself to not grow up so fast, and to take it a little slow, in that, taking a year off between school. I get at this point in my life, no one cared that I went to college at 18 versus 19, right? Like, it doesn't matter, and that year would have been so transformational in who I was. So yeah, remember to play, and don't hurry in growing up.
Yep. Great. And what's your alpha mom song? So if you have a deadline looming at work, you really need to fundraise, Helix is sick and you don't feel well yourself, what music do you play on your mental mind to make it through the week?
Yeah, so that's um I this is sort of a mental hack, and this is but if you've ever heard of binaural beats,
Oh,
it's less of a song and more a put on headphones that play frequencies at
yeah.
two different frequencies, and then your brain averages out to the average one, and they have different playlists or different frequencies for creative thought, and for visualization, for relaxation, and for deep sleep and recovery, and for focus. And to your point, whenever I get to the thing that I'm trying to do, it's maybe if it's writing a paper or coming up with a new idea or just de-stressing, I'll put on that specific song, and it gets my brain specifically into that wavelength. And it's the best biohack that I know of. And it's been such a gift to give myself.
Okay, that's a new one. I haven't heard of that before. Would you mind
Yeah,
sharing the link?
I'll share the playlist with you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That's
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so one last question for starters. So founders mom who are really trying to make it through the year, their whole journey, but also want to make sure that they're doing the right thing with their family back at home. One advice would you give breadwinning founders?
Uh, like the thing is ask for help. The way you do this is by asking for help and getting support in both parts of your life. At work, right, and getting people to run parts of the team, and then in your personal life, letting people come in and help watch your kids so that you can do both, or whatever. Maybe it's you watch the kid while people help clean up the house, but you're trying to find time for both things. Time is your most precious resource, and finding so you can spend it on whatever you want, whether or not it is family or work, and finding ways of helping others, getting others to help you so you can get more of that time back is, I mean, that's how you do it.
That's okay. Yeah, you can't do
That's
it
how you do
all.
it.
So
You can't.
let
So
other
don't
people
try.
help you.
The sooner, yeah, exactly. The sooner you figure out how to get as many hands in there, the more time you'll get back, and the more you can do.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, Masha, thank you so much for making the time. I know you're a very busy mom, very busy founder, so appreciate the time that you've spent with us today.
Thanks, Jane. Really appreciate the conversation, the questions, and I'm available if anyone wants to reach out and communicate and continue the conversation. Find me on LinkedIn, and I'm also happy to share my email too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to Breadwinning Mums. Please subscribe and leave us some feedback so we can continue to make the show better for you. If you know a fellow breadwinning mum, please share the show so we can cheer each other on. Until next time.